Part 3. Directions. In this part, you will hear 3 talks or lectures. The talks or lectures will not be repeated. There are 5 questions for each talk or lecture. For each question, choose the right answer, A, B, C, or D. Then on the answer sheet, find the number of the question and fill in the space that corresponds to the letter of the answer you have chosen. Questions 21 to 25. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Normally in this class, we design and evaluate apps, and we'll get back to that tomorrow. This afternoon, I'd like to raise your awareness about the issue of electronic waste disposal. As some of you know, I've got twin daughters who turn 13 on Tuesday. Like many children their age, they're totally in love with electronic devices. My husband gave his old smartphone to one of them, and I was forced to give my newish phone to the other. That was 2 years ago. Now they're both demanding brand new smartphones of their own. As an anxious parent, I would have given in to this demand had I not just read an article about e-waste. Let me add that I read part of it on my tablet at home, the rest on my desktop computer at work, and afterwards I counted how many electronic items my family and I have at home, at school, and at work. And we've got 24. Yup, 24. An average American family, no doubt. Anyway, I finally agreed to birthday phones for my girls on condition that my husband and I shed some of our own devices as responsibly as we could. In the past, we've just put them out in the garbage as though they were banana peel or broken plates. This time, I decided to take 2 laptops and my girls' phones to a recycler accredited by the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA. I found an interactive map on the EPA website showing companies that sign up to recycling schemes called e-Stewards and Responsible Recycling Practices. It's easy enough to drop stuff off at these companies and receive cash in return. I do regret to say that in the U.S., the cash return is tiny because there are currently insufficient volumes of electronic trash for these companies to turn into treasure. Since I'd like to encourage this recycling practice among my students and colleagues, there's a web link on my Facebook page. Frankly, I don't think Americans recycle enough. Yet, even with these companies that have popped up recently, there's still a huge problem. I mean, the collection of the e-waste is fine, but who knows how it's processed? The EPA believes that only 20% is actually recycled, and the rest is incinerated or put in landfill. The auditing of this process has yet to begin. The majority of local e-waste, around 8 million metric tons a year, is sent off abroad, mostly to Asia or Africa, where health and safety regulations scarcely exist. One reason the U.S. still banishes most of its e-waste is because it refused to sign the 1989 Basel Convention that controls the export of hazardous waste from rich countries to poorer ones. Needless to say, it wasn't the only rich country to spurn the convention. Neither Canada nor Japan consented to a 1995 amendment banning such trade completely. However, European signatories to the Basel Convention may not, in reality, behave any better. Inspections at ports in Germany and the Netherlands have proven that e-waste, like much other cargo, is deliberately mislabeled so it passes unnoticed through customs.
Question 26 to 30.
First, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 26 to 30.
Good morning. Today I'd like to present the findings of our Year 2 project on wildlife found in gardens throughout our city. I'll start by saying something about the background to the project, then talk a little bit about our research techniques, and then indicate some of our interim findings. First of all, how did we choose our topic? Well, there are 4 of us in the group, and one day, while we were discussing a possible focus, 2 of the group mentioned that they had seen yet more sparrowhawks, one of Britain's most interesting birds of prey, in their own city centre gardens, and wondered why they were turning up in these gardens in great numbers. We were all very engaged by the idea of why wild animals would choose to inhabit a city garden. Why is it so popular with wildlife when the countryside itself is becoming less so? The first thing we did was to establish what proportion of the urban land is taken up by private gardens. We estimated that it was about 1/5, and this was endorsed by looking at large-scale usage maps in the town land survey office, 24% to be precise. Our own informal discussions with neighbors and friends led us to believe that many garden owners had interesting experiences to relate regarding wild animal sightings. So we decided to survey garden owners from different areas of the city. Just over 100 of them completed a survey once every 2 weeks for 12 months, ticking off species they had seen from a pro forma list, and adding the names of any rarer ones. Meanwhile, we were doing our own observations in selected gardens throughout the city. We deliberately chose smaller ones because they were by far the most typical in the city. The whole point of the project was to look at the norm, not the exception. Alongside this primary research on urban gardens, we were studying a lot of books about the decline of wild animals in the countryside and thinking of possible causes for this. So what did we find? Well, so much that I just won't have time to tell you about here. If you're interested in reading our more comprehensive findings, we've produced detailed graphic representations on the college website, and of course any of the group would be happy to talk to you about them. Just email us. What we've decided to present today is information about just 3 species because we felt these gave a good indication of the processes at work in rural and urban settings as a whole.
Question 31 to 35.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 35. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 35.
Good morning, class. Okay. Today, we're going to talk about flex time. Flex time is a scheduling system that, well, it gives full-time employees some flexibility when they're deciding on their work schedules. So it's not just the typical 9-to-5 workday that most people are used to. I'm going to guess that you probably haven't had a flex time schedule since most of you haven't worked a full-time job yet. But maybe if you talk to your parents or some of your friends, you'll find somebody who has flex time. Anyway, in most cases, an employee can't just decide that they want to work a flex time schedule. It's really up to management to say yes or no. And since we're talking about management in this class, it's important to understand flex time if you ever want to manage a business. Let's start by describing different types of flex time schedules. The first type is called a condensed schedule. Under a condensed schedule, an employee still works the full 40 hours a week, but instead of working those hours over 5 days, which is typical, they work them over 3 or 4 days. So the weekly hours are condensed into fewer days, right? Let me just give you an example of a condensed schedule. As I said before, a conventional schedule for an office job would be Monday through Friday from 9 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon. Now, a condensed schedule might mean that the person works only 4 days a week. Let's say Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's a 10-hour workday. So that's one kind of flex time schedule. Another type of flex time schedule is called an altered schedule. And with an altered schedule, employees work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. But instead of coming in at 9 a.m., like they would with a traditional work schedule, they come in either earlier or later than that. And their day ends according to when they come in. So maybe an employee will choose to come in at 7 a.m., and they'll work a full 8 hours, so they get to leave at 3 p.m. This could be every day or only certain days of the week. Okay, so those are two types of flex time schedules. The condensed schedule and the altered schedule. If that's clear, let's go ahead and move on. Okay, next we need to talk about the pros and cons of a flex time system. Imagine that you are the manager of an office and you're trying to decide whether flex time is a good way to go. You have to think about the possible advantages and disadvantages, right? Let's start with advantages. First of all, say you allow your employees to work flexible schedules because of maybe family obligations. For example, imagine a household in which both parents work full-time from 9 to 5, but their kids are in school and the school hours are from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day. With this schedule, getting the kids to school in the morning is no problem, but picking them up after school might be difficult. So, maybe the mother decides to start a flex time schedule from 7 to 3. That way, the father can take their kids to school in the morning and the mother can pick them up in the afternoon. In this case, using flex time is convenient. Now, if you're a manager and you allow an employee to have flex time to accommodate family obligations, that employee will probably appreciate the flexibility quite a bit. As a result, you are more likely to retain those employees. You'll build loyalty. But flex time is not a perfect system. In fact, there are times when flex time could make life more difficult for you as a manager. For example, let's say you're trying to hold a staff meeting. It could be hard to schedule a meeting that everyone is able to attend if different employees are working different hours. Also, it might be harder for you to oversee your employees' work if they are not always in the office at the same time that you are. And one more thing is that it might be difficult for your employees to work in teams, to work together on different projects, if they're in and out at different times. As a manager, you'd have to weigh the pros and cons and just figure out what works best for your company.
That is the end of part 3. Now, you will have 7 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. That is the end of the listening test.